We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Saturday, and we have Ed with us. He was not available last week, but he's back now. And I'm glad you're here because we got so much shit to talk about. And I'm
Yeah,
interested on an old guy's perspective. What was that Mel Brooks character, the oldest man in the world?
yeah. The we'll go with that. I'll think of it in a minute, but yeah, he and Carl Reiner a bit they did for years and years. World's oldest man or whatever. It was a slightly different title, but we can go with
Right. And that's what I'd like to look at you as here on
that.
I'm grateful that on one occasion I can come on this show and have somebody that's older than me. I've been the old man for many cases, and now here you are. We can get the real facts from the people, from the guy who was there and saw that motherfucking thing happen.
That's right. I mean, I was just talking to my wife about this yesterday. That all of the bad shit that's coming our way with Trump, a lot of it. I won't say all because, quite frankly, he can come up with all kinds of really stupid things to do that no one has thought of before. And then what's the External Revenue Service being the latest. But, I lived through all of this crap before. I was born in 1949 and grew up in the 1950s when it wasn't quite as drastic as The Handmaid's Tale, but it was pretty damn close. And it was almost a theocracy in some ways. And a lot of the bad shit that's going on now was very much in force back then, socially. Economically, things were the best ever for white people. Minorities, not so much. And as soon as they started doing better, that's when the hammer came down again. And poor people, but of all stripes. But yeah, I've lived through this before, and trust me, it sucks. And you're stupid if you voted for Donald Trump.
I'm
Next.
glad you brought up what you lived through. I was more talking about the crucifixion and some of those things way back, but we'll get to that later. Um, the big story is the TikTok ban, and why this is relevant to you is because you're
Sure.
a TikToker. You're on
Yeah.
TikTok.
Yeah,
I'm
and
on TikTok.
yeah, I've just reached the point where I could actually kind of monetize it, and so that ticks me off that it might go away. How many listeners do you have on your podcast right now? What you think, Mike?
Oh, I don't know,
Half a
billion.
mil, billion?
Got to be a couple billion.
Okay, well there you go.
I don't honestly know, to be honest with you. It's
Yeah,
not as big as Joe Rogan. I'll tell you
no.
that.
Well, that's because you tell the truth.
Well, there's
You're
there's something to be
never going
said about that.
someone who tells the truth will never do as well as somebody who can just lie or put someone on to lie and sit back
Right.
and say, oh wow, I didn't know that. And Joe Rogan's a waste of time. I'm sorry. And I've heard that women now use that as a benchmark, that if a guy they go out with listens to Joe Rogan, they just cross him off.
I think that's a good move because we're
Yeah, I
talking
do too.
about the bro culture is not the finest example of manhood in this country. And if
Well,
you like the bro culture, you're going to be in trouble down the road.
exactly. And Joe Rogan is not new. I mean, he's just a variation on Rush Limbaugh, who's a variation on some others, Joe Pine, and people you
Yeah,
don't even remember because they were around before your time. But you remember Rush Limbaugh and how popular, quote, he was at a time.
absolutely.
And you never hear anything about the guy. And the reason was he never had anything of substance. We still talk about Walter Cronkite and hold him up as a paragon. People mention Paul Harvey and others like that because they didn't actively lie all the time. But there is nothing that those guys can have as a legacy because they never say anything true. It's like all the guys on Fox. As soon as they're dead, they're dead. Who talks about Tucker Carlson anymore? I mean, he's got this little webcast of his, and you see it every now and then. But basically, he's just he's gone. Same with Bill. What's his name?
Bill
Uh,
O'Reilly.
yeah, O'Reilly. Exactly. I mean, they surface every now and then to throw out some crap, but mostly they're just negligible because they never delivered anything of substance. It was all lies, and Trump, of course, fits right in with that.
Absolutely. I think we need to explain what the TikTok ban situation is for those people
Yeah,
who aren't aware. We know the TikTok ban was set to go into force on January 19th. That's tomorrow, according to
right.
when you're listening to this podcast. Um, and the Supreme Court had to make a decision whether that bill was constitutional, whether they would uphold the ban. A lot of people may be surprised, but they upheld the ban. They said it was constitutional. That may surprise a lot of folks. It doesn't surprise me. The
Not at
Supreme
all.
Court is bought. The Supreme Court's bought and paid for. They're going to do whatever they're fucking told. So now people think, well, since the Supreme Court said the ban stands, that TikTok is going to shut down Sunday, tomorrow, and that's just not going to happen. And it's because of our savior, Joe Biden. Joe Biden has said he's not going to enforce it for the 36 hours left in his presidency. So, for all intents and purposes, Joe Biden basically put a pause on this by doing nothing, kicking the
Yeah.
can down the road, putting it on Donald Trump's doorstep. And now he has to make this decision as soon as he becomes president. Now, this may be one way of Joe Biden saying, fuck you, Trump, it's your problem, or
Yeah.
Trump saying, I want to be the hero, or a combination of both. But I was going to ask you about this. This is my problem with the Democrats. This is why they lost the election. They
Yeah.
don't take opportunities. They aren't assertive. They don't make a point when the opportunity is there. They just sit back and wait for things to happen. And I think that era is behind us. We need to get with the times.
We do, and we need to get rid of the old leadership. Nancy Pelosi, sorry, your day is over. Go away. I think you did some great work, but like Ruth
Yeah.
Bader Ginsburg, you held on too long, and we all suffer for it, or will suffer for it. Now, she gave up her leadership role, yeah, but go away and let somebody young get in there and do something, please. Um, Democrats, unfortunately or unfortunately, are never in lockstep. Republicans always are because they've primaried out anybody with any decency or any morality or any really even any intellect. They've primaried them out. So they just follow like sheep whatever their Lord and Savior Trump tells them to do, and his subsidiaries, of course, like Johnson and Thune and whoever else will be in there. Um, they always are in lockstep, and that makes them, of course, easier to deal with. Democrats, of course, still have. Um, we have everything from Joe Manchin up to the good ones. So
Right.
it's hard to get. It's like herding cats in a way. And it takes a very strong individual. It takes a Lyndon Johnson. It takes maybe Barack Obama was stronger in a different way, more of a diplomatic way than Johnson, who was more heavy-handed. But to get things done, you got to get organized, and you've got to be in lockstep.
For those old people in Congress who are wondering whether they should leave or not, just think of this comparison. If you go back in history, Joe Montana was one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the
Absolutely.
NFL. He was incredible. He was as good as anybody we see today. He is now well into his 70s. Put him back in uniform and in an NFL game and find out what the fuck happens. Joe's not going to do well, not because he
No.
doesn't have the talent, because he's fucking 75 years old. And when you're 75 years old, excuse me, Ed, I know you're in that range. I'm
Yeah.
65. I've lost a step or two, but you got to know your place. Some of these things are a young man or young woman's game. You got to let them decide their own destiny. And these people refuse to let go.
Not only that, but they see the world. People like me, I'm going to say it. People like me still have a worldview that maybe not doesn't really add up to what's going on now. They may think that I grew up in an era where the CEO or the owner, whatever, the guy who ran the local factory lived here in
Yeah.
my small town. He had a big, nice house and so forth, but you'd see him in a restaurant. He'd come to the little league games and all of that sort of thing, and people of my generation, I think, still relate that way and think, well, these are just people and they have the same kind of morality and so forth that I do. But that's not the case anymore. Number one, I mean, the CEOs of corporations are, they're paid with stock options. They don't worry about money or anything like that, and they know they're only there as long as they increase shareholder value. The guy who ran the local industry, he could see when everybody was hurting. Maybe he'd raise wages. Maybe he would keep people on when he should lay them off. He had a sense of community and being part of the community. That's no longer the case, folks. The board of directors and the CEO could give a damn about you. They really could, and depending on what, if it's health care, they just soon you died because they already got your insurance money, right?
Right.
The insurance companies, they don't care if you live or die. As a matter of fact, it's better if you die. They don't have to treat you.
Right.
And people, it's hard for people my age to wrap their heads around that. They want to believe in institutions, but the institutions no longer serve unless we take them back. We have to take back healthcare. We have to destroy Fox News and put integrity back into the news media, or destroy it and start from the bottom. We could do that too. There's just no way to control the flow of information so that the truth is still the truth. It's whatever comes out of somebody's mouth is just an opinion unless it's backed with facts. And I think that Fox News was the beginning of the end for truth telling in America, and others followed suit, of course. We got to break the back of that somehow. We have to be able to, I mean, right now, I'm relating this to TikTok, okay?
Mhm.
Everybody's up in arms and saying, well, the Chinese, blah, 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 influence, whatever, taking data, this sort of thing. But it's the same thing that Fox is doing here. It's the same thing that Russia is doing here. It's disinformation to the point that people lose any faith in their government. They think it's the swamp. Everybody is out for themselves. And if they're talking about Republicans, they're right. But we've got to get some trust back somehow. And I'm not sure how we do that, except we just keep doing what we're doing, Mike.
Well, yeah, that's true. And I think that you brought up a word that is kind of irrelevant now. And you said morality.
Yeah.
And it's my contention there is no more morality in
Mm.
media, in politics, or in business. It's only about one thing. It's about the bottom line. It's about the shareholders. It's about making money. And that's the fatal flaw with this country. Everybody's gone the way of money and power, and morality doesn't matter. They'll justify what they do as moral, but that doesn't mean it's moral. And that's the
No,
problem with the country. We've gotten away from morality. We don't care about other people. There is no compassion. There is no empathy. And that's why we're in the situation we're in now.
I think that's true, especially on the right. Although I imagine there's plenty of lefties like me that are
Oh,
guilty of
yeah.
it too. But the fact is, war was declared on the American middle class in the 1970s. It probably predates that a little bit. It was probably as soon as Roosevelt was dead, they started looking in that direction. But it really kicked in in the 1970s and really hit its stride in 1980 with Reagan. There was a war where they decided we've got to get all the money concentrated in a few hands so they can buy the media, they can buy health care, they can buy everything. And once they control it, then everybody's living in a company town. You remember what company towns were like? Textile industries did it, coal mines, all of that. They'd build a little town near where the coal mine was, right? And they'd build the houses and they'd build the stores and everything. But and they would let the workers live in the houses, but they had to pay rent, and they would shop in the stores, but they had to buy food and all of that at whatever prices that the company decided. And they wouldn't pay them in money, they paid them in company script, which you couldn't save and you couldn't use anywhere else. So you could never move away. And also they had something that they didn't have debtor's prison, but they would say that, well, this person ran up this bill for their rent, for their food, or whatever, and never had an intention to pay. So that was fraud. So they would lock people up for fraud, not for debt, you see. It's a very fine line, but they made it work. And that's where they're aiming. I've heard this before. During the election, Trump was saying, well, we're going to build these new cities. And I've heard any number of oligarchs say that they want to build these new cities. And guess what they're going to do? Guess what it's going to be? They're going to import all of these workers from India and China and so forth, pay them a quarter of what they pay our own engineers and so forth, and lower the living standard even further, because they don't care if you live or die, and quite frankly, they'd rather you died.
No, they really don't care. And the most troubling thing of this is pretty apparent. This is pretty clear what's going on. Still 49% of the people voted to enact this. Now Joe Biden said something in an interview with Lawrence O'Donnell last night. He made an admission. He admitted that he made a mistake during his administration. And the mistake was that he didn't crow about, didn't talk about, didn't brag about all the accomplishments they made. And that's true. He didn't do that. And there were a lot of accomplishments he could have crowed about. And people say the mistake was that he didn't brag about it. No, the mistake he made is he's from a different era. The
Yes.
idea of crowing about your successes would have been impolite, not
Yeah.
discreet, not decent. And Joe's mistake was he's from a bygone era and he hasn't grown into the times we have today, which is clearly more unsophisticated and more in your face and slapping people in the face with all the accomplishments you did. That's what you have to do in this country today, because
Yeah.
people don't have the motivation, the ability, or the capability to look into things and actually get facts or truth. You have to slap them in the face with a fucking fish. Unfortunately, that's Donald Trump's fucking specialty.
It is. And also the quote mainstream media um, is given to conflict. They want conflict. So rather than congratulating Joe on a job well done on, say, the infrastructure bill or a thousand other things he did that were really, really good, they would taken Trump at the other side and say, well, Trump's was better, which was a lie. Trump never had an economy. He
No,
coasted on the Obama economy for 2 years, and then the bottom fell out because he was a moron and his policies did not work. There was no Trump economy ever. All he ever did was get a tax cut passed that gave his cronies and himself more money so they could take it out of circulation, so they could make you even poorer, and to enable the oligarchs and the corporations that get buy up more and more and more so that one or two of them control everything and collude with one another. And that was the Trump economy, right? Making everything that Trump did was awful, um, except what he was able to inherit from Obama, who saved us from George Bush's depression. And you could call it a recession if you want to, but it was pretty damn near a depression. I know it took almost half of my savings. I had to build back, work longer, and so forth. It's going to happen again. You'd better, and I'm warning you right now, you better find a way to protect your holdings, because everything that he is planning on doing is going to hurt you and me. Not the billionaires. I mean, they got so much money they can't be hurt.
right.
It just simply can't be. And most of them, as a matter of fact, you talk about morality. If you have $1 billion, you're immoral. You're totally immoral because you can never spend that. You can't.
Right.
I mean, you could maybe buy a network or buy Twitter or something like that. That does nothing. that just takes that money and sticks it into something where it doesn't do anything. It doesn't help anybody. It's just an amusement. It's like buying another yacht. It just, it does nothing for you or me. Maybe a few guys who sell or make yachts, but that's about it.
People have to understand when you are worth $1 billion, or in the case of Elon Musk, $400 billion. The
Mhm.
goal isn't making more money. They've made more money than they can possibly spend, as you pointed out. So
Yeah,
what's the next step? The next step is exactly what Elon Musk is doing. I have all the money. Now I want power.
right.
And that's what he's striving for. I mean, we're hearing that, he and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to run this Doge thing, which isn't even in the government. It's
No.
outside the government. It's basically a lobbying firm, and people want to make it out as some authority. They are not. However, I'm hearing that Donald Trump is affording Elon Musk an office in the White House.
Hmm.
I mean, that's so inappropriate. It's fucking ridiculous.
Uh, I use this metaphor again, and I mean it. We're at war, and right
Right.
now we're losing. We're losing. They have. If I think this even goes back to the Civil War, maybe the South lost the war because they weren't prepared. There was, I think, as Rhett Butler points out in Gone with the Wind, there's not a single cannon factory in the South. He says, arguing against the war, right? Which
Right.
he ultimately embraces. But look around now. Where are all the weapons manufacturers and so forth? They're in the South and the West and so forth. I think this
Right.
has been going on for a long, long time, and there have been these guys with money, the Koch brothers and so forth, working behind the scenes, paying for these think tanks to come up with all of this legislation, which they sneaked into various states and so forth. This has been a long war, and unfortunately, we weren't paying attention. And guys like, I hate to say it, Joe Biden, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and others um, were sort of complicit in that they started going to Wall Street for their funding rather than to the labor unions, which of course were eviscerated. Um, but once you start doing that, then you are beholden to the same people that
Right.
are trying to destroy um, this country to turn it back to the way it was in the 1800s, when you had these few oligarchs, the Rockefellers and so forth, that owned everything, built these giant palaces, which are still around, but no one can afford to live in them. But they're doing it again. Look at what Bezos and Musk and all of these people do. They build these giant bunkers and so forth on Hawaii or wherever. Not so much Musk, but the others. Um, and this is where the money goes. They don't pay taxes. They don't pay very much at all in taxes, if anything. But you and I pay taxes, and that's what is coming back again. That's what all of these tariffs are going to do, is make us pay while the oligarchs get another big tax cut. That's what's coming, folks. And I'm looking at a worldwide depression here. I hate to say it, but if everything plays out the way that Trump seems to be heading, we are looking at a gigantic depression, because this is the same playbook they used before the last one, when they passed gigantic tariffs and there was no real enforcement of the income tax. The income tax is what created the middle class. We took the money from the big guys and we spread it out and used it to create things like the interstate highways
Right.
and rural electrification and that sort of thing that made the middle class possible. And they're trying to revoke that and have just a few people who have all the money, and you have to work for them or you starve to death.
I look at this situation, and, when Donald Trump was elected, my wife and a lot of people asked me, what happened? And I said, it just makes no logical sense. Donald Trump was the worst candidate in history. Kamala Harris had a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of money. It made no sense to me at all. And I get the impression with this country that they're not capable of looking forward. They're not capable of investigating and understanding what the truth is. I feel like, and I'm almost anxious for it now, the inauguration and such. I almost feel like the only way some of these motherfuckers are going to learn is to get a foot up their ass and get burnt to the ground. And it's
Well, that
unfortunate that the innocent people will have to go through it too, but that seems to be the only way this country learns anything.
Yeah, I wonder if the country will survive it because, quite frankly, I'm thinking there may be a civil war at some point, a revolution of sorts. Because when you get down so far that you have nothing left to lose, that's when the torches and pitchforks come out. That's what
Absolutely.
happened in France. That's what happened in Russia. And it could happen again, especially if these people finally realize how hoodwinked they were.
Well, people have, I've had people on the show and they've suggested something that I've suggested too, that this fight that's upcoming is not between Democrats and Republicans. It's from the bottom to the top. The
Mm-hmm.
people in the middle class, the poor people are going to come to a point where they're just tired of being put upon and stolen from. And there will be a revolt. We've seen it in the past in other countries in history. That is imminent if they continue to, with the greed that they take, there's going to come a point where it's just too much. And like you say, people will have nothing to lose. So why not fucking fight?
This is the thing. This actually, I find some hope in this. I mean, the American people remember, such as we are, this grand mosaic, which makes up the quote American people, um, has never had a tradition of a monarchy or a dictator.
Right.
Nobody alive has, except immigrants, of course, who've gotten away from it and moved here. Nobody who was native born to America has ever experienced that sort of thing. So when they start really pushing, there's going to be pushback. At least I hope there will be. I'm 75. I got nothing to lose, really, you know?
Yeah, well,
So
yeah.
I promise you there will be pushback. But I don't know how it's going to play out. I mean, it could. The first 2 years of Trump could be so bad that everybody goes, "No way, we're replacing the Senate and the House." And but you got to remember that they've been working at this for a long, long time, and a lot of the people who voted for Trump voted not. They've lost the ability to think, which is, as you said, to find the truth. And it's easy to find if you just look. All you have to do is look at Donald Trump's background, what he has done, and see that he is a reprobate. In the same way that you can see that Joel Osteen is a reprobate, these people, if you just take a look at them and think, you come to that conclusion. Unfortunately, for many years now, they have been, um, what's the word I want? Basically, cozying up to the religious right, who do
Right.
not think, but only believe. And if you only believe, you will believe that what you want to believe is true. You will believe that talking snakes and giant boats full of animals are real. And consequently, you will also believe that the pastor who tells you about that tells you Donald Trump is a good guy. You're going to believe that. Or that Vladimir Putin is a Christian. You're going to believe that. And I don't know how you deal with that. Right now in Texas, they're trying very hard to turn Texas into a theocracy, and they'll probably manage it. Now, what happens there? What happens there when they say, okay, all businesses have to be closed on Sunday? And we're banning liquor and we're banning weed and we're banning everything that people like, and that no, you can't get a divorce anymore. There's no such thing as no fault divorce. You have to stay with your abusing husband because we say so. That's what's going to be happening in Texas before you. It's already happening with what they're doing with abortions and so forth, and that that drives me to a fury when I see that there are people who want to impose that, and I mention The Handmaid's Tale because that's coming. They're going to try it. Where I live here in Tennessee, that's coming. They brought about the voucher thing now. They're going to try to empower all the religious schools and get rid of the public schools. And you'll see it happening. And you'll see it happening in every southern state. They're already doing it in most of them. You're going to see that happening where they get the church and state, the separation, which has served us so well for so long, that the founding fathers, such as they were not perfect, but they got that right. They looked at Europe and saw hundreds of years of conflict and murder and torture because the Catholics couldn't get along with the Protestants and vice versa. And then you threw some Muslims in the mix, and it was nothing but chop, chop, chop for 1,000 years or more. So you think that won't happen here? You think it can't happen here? You think that they won't be running an inquisition? You know they will. You know what these people are like. You see them on TV, and they almost say it out loud now.
Yeah, they do. They're very in your face. To a certain extent, I kind of hope Texas gets as draconian and dystopian as possible, because then it will be a test model for the rest of the
Yeah.
country. It will fail miserably. Granted, the people in that state will be sacrificed because of it, but I'd rather see it in a smaller scale before it does expand throughout the country. I mean, if that's what Texans want, then that's what you should get. But then you have to deal with the end result. And hopefully people will be looking from the outside going, oh man, that's fucked up. Let's change our mind on this. I'm not so sure that people are bright enough to do that, but um, that is where things are headed. And it's frustrating to see us going back in time and taking up things that make no sense. I'm convinced the problem with Republicans and some Democrats is that this country has an epidemic of selfishness, lack
Yeah.
of empathy. It's what I
Mm-hmm.
get, when I get it, how come I didn't get it? That's all they really care about. And they have no foresight. And what I mean by that is that they're going to be selfish and they're going to be selfish and they're going to be greedy, but they don't look long term. Like, for example, with the wealthy people, you can be greedy, you can drain the middle class, but what happens when you drain them completely? They drive this economy. They can't buy your products, they can't buy your cars or houses. Now you've eaten yourself to death, and they can't see the foresight. There's no empathy, there's no common sense, and there's no foresight. And this is a recipe for disaster, for ultimate failure.
And for example, we're seeing this now with Musk wanting to import the tech labor, because he says American schools and colleges are horrible and everybody is just stupid and can't possibly do the work. Interestingly enough, that Boeing is one of the companies that has made great use of these visas, bringing these people in, and their
Yeah.
planes crash a lot, don't they? It's
Mm-hmm.
because you can't grow up in a village in India, and even though you may get a decent education, you can't come here and um, be completely integrated into the culture. What they're going to do is try to bring these people in and use them essentially like the farm workers that they bring in now.
Yeah,
They'll work
absolutely.
for a lot less than the or will do jobs that nobody else will do. But in the case of the farm workers, but they will bring these people in at a reduced rate, and they will drive down um, the salaries of everybody else, right? That's what they're doing it for. It's not that our engineers are incompetent or anything like that. It's just simply that people can't, number one, can't afford to go to school to get the credentials, for one thing. I have a friend who staffs a very large corporation. He's had to go to Africa to get electrical people, engineers, and so forth, because the local schools aren't turning out enough of them. And the ones who do are immediately snapped up at high salaries by other companies. So he has to look outward. It drives him crazy that he has to do that. Then he has to go to foreign country to recruit talent. But it's simply that we aren't turning out enough because we let the trade schools die, right? So
Yeah.
it's a two-handed thing that's going on. We're not educating our people, but we're willing to bring in these people from other countries who will work for less.
I think Elon Musk made uh, one of my beliefs valid in when he was saying we can't get the people from this country that are smart enough or good enough to run technology. So that's why we have to go to India. Um, I've said before, this country deals with crisis. You know, when a normal person is running it, whether it be the fires in California or hurricanes in Florida, we pour money into those things to revive them and make them better. And given what Musk said and what we're seeing generally, I think we have a crisis of education in this country,
Yes,
epidemic of stupid. And I don't mean that flippantly. I mean that seriously. We just saw
yes,
this in the election. We're supposed to
yes.
be the greatest country in the world. Should we not have the smartest people? And if we don't have the smartest people, we need to make some efforts to improve that. And that would involve putting as many people in college or in post secondary or in trade schools as possible. That
Absolutely.
epidemic is there, but nobody wants to do anything about it. It's it's unbelievable to me.
Right. Now, I grew up in an era where schools were not didn't get nearly the funding that they do now. But the principal of the school I went to was he had very high standards, and he made sure the teachers and the students adhered to them. That's what you need. We had people. Two of my friends turned out to be very high grade engineers. Right. Um, they went to the same school I did. A bunch of the people who went to the same school I did graduated without being able to really write anything other than their name,
Right.
so, and read anything other than a comic book. They couldn't even make head nor tail of the newspaper. So they listened to Fox News. Um, we have to do better. We could do better by making trade schools and college free.
Yeah.
Free, at
And we have a
least through the
shortage.
first two
We
years
have a
of college.
we have a shortage of tradesmen.
Right.
Try to get a plumber or an electrician.
Where
This
I
is a
am,
crisis. We got to
I
do it.
have to call a town 30 miles away to get a plumber, and I have to pay a premium. The same with an electrician. I have to pay just to get them here. They'll roll that back in to the cost of what they do in most cases. But that's the thing. I have to wait, and they have to come 30 miles because there are none locally. And a qualified engineer locally, electrical guy, an electrician, could make a mint. He
Yeah.
can be a millionaire just because people need that done, and there aren't anybody to do it. There isn't anybody to do it that they trust because they're
I
all
have
shade tree guys.
on the show. I have a guy named TJ the plumber, and he works in the unions with plumbing unions. And the fact of the matter is, if you're a kid coming out of high school and you want a quick route to making six figures and working hard, but not too hard, go to a trade school, be a plumber, be an electrician, be some kind of tradesman, because not only are the jobs out there, there's not enough people to apply for these jobs. This is a
Right.
sure thing. If you're coming out of school right now and you don't know what to do, decide to be a plumber or an electrician. In 5, 6 years, you'll be making six figures and living pretty well.
Yeah, there's other things that need to be done. We need not less regulation. We need more regulation. We need to re-regulate the insurance industry and say, if a doctor says this person needs a procedure and you've sold them an insurance plan, you will pay for it. You will not deny it. The doctor decides, not some bureaucrat behind a desk somewhere, not even a bureaucrat, a desk jockey, who is paid to run an algorithm to try to deny the claims. And that's why the guy got shot. That's why that healthcare guy got
It is.
shot because, I'm not going to glorify the guy who shot him. I'm not going to say that's what should be done, but I am saying that that executive and people under him murdered people every day by denying them the care they needed that they had already paid for. And there's no other way to look at it. It was murder. It was calculated murder. And what do we do with people who murder people? Just think about that. So it needs to be brought home to this people that that's what they're doing. They are actually murdering people. And I'm not saying that you have to shoot them down, but you've got to make sure they don't have the power to do that.
The Republicans have been successful making people believe that regulations are bad,
Mm-hmm.
that the government shouldn't control all these things. We should have a free market. There should be no regulations. And I just want to say this: regulations aren't important if you have decent people with integrity that deal with situations that is in the best interest of the people and the country. The problem is when we have CEOs of companies that don't have that integrity or that decency, you've got to police them. It's like saying, okay, I'm going to send a bunch of shoplifters into a store, but we want no regulation. Don't have anybody watching them. What's going to fucking happen? Your
Mm-hmm.
store is going to get robbed. And it's the same thing when we're dealing with CEOs. Regulations are bad if everybody does what they're supposed to do and is decent about it, but we know they don't. Trickle down might work if anything actually trickles down, but the greed stops that from trickling down. Regulations are there to control bad people. And we know we're replete with bad people in corporations and in politics.
The only reason for a corporation to exist, the only reason is to mitigate liability.
All right.
If I own a factory and I'm putting pollution into the local river, I'm going to have to pay for that cleanup and so forth. With a corporation, I'm not liable. The corporation is this fiction,
Yeah.
and they'll get some sort of fine, a $25 million fine. Yet I just made $2 billion with my company. My corporation just made $2 billion, and they fined me 25 million. That's nothing. That's nothing, but it won't be that much. It'll be more like 25,000 or something like that. That means nothing. Remember, Donald Trump ran a scam university. He collected $250 million and he had to pay a $25 million fine. Looks like he made out pretty good.
It's a cost of doing business. That's all
Yeah.
it is. It's the cost of doing business. So Ed, on Monday, just a couple of days away, we will have the inauguration of the 47th president of the United States. And that, of course, is going to be Donald Trump. Now, there's just been an announcement that the inauguration will be held indoors. Donald Trump made this announcement. It will be
Yeah.
held indoors because it's too cold. Now, I just checked the weather in DC on Monday. The low will be 9, and that's kind of cold. The high will be 24. I say Donald Trump's a pussy because if you spend time in Minnesota,
Yeah.
tomorrow it's going to be -5 for a high and -9 for a low. So if you can't handle the cold, bitch, why do you want to be president?
I think he's
Maybe
afraid
we've come
somebody will shoot at him.
there, yeah, and when I bring that up, people say, well, you're hoping for that. No, I'm not hoping for that because I think that would be a bad thing for this country, even if it was Donald Trump. Now, I wouldn't cry about it, I'll tell you that. But I think that Donald Trump puts himself in a situation where he's got a lot of people scared, frightened for their futures, frightened for their kids and grandchildren. This could cultivate violence, not
Mhm.
with crowds of Democrats. That's not going to happen. But we know it just takes one weirdo with some good aim, and that could change the course of history.
Yeah, I certainly don't endorse that. I don't endorse shooting anyone, but I'm saying that these things do engender that at some point. when hope is gone, you grab whatever straw you have left, and in some cases, it's violence against the people that you find you see as exploiting you.
Right.
And really, that's what this is all about. A small group of people exploiting everyone else, and it's not new. It's been going on. I mean, we had pharaohs in ancient Egypt. We had uh, kings and queens and czars and potentates and all of that all through the years, and that's what it was all about. One or two people at the top, a few others to support them underneath that they've paid off, and everybody else a slave or something close to that, a peon, a serf, whatever you want to call it. That was the way the world worked until um, basically when France and Russia, and of course we had our own revolution here, said no, no, we're gonna even things out a little bit. And even that didn't take in the beginning because our founding fathers, who I patted on the back earlier, really didn't have in mind empowering the people. They wanted rich white men to be in charge. And it was that way for a long time. And it was only gradually that we took that over again. And to lose it would be tragic. And the world would suffer for it because we have been the shining city on the hill, not because we were more moral or more religious than someone else. No, it's because that we let the people have a say in what things and the way things were done. Eventually, we got most people able to vote, although the right wing always tries to suppress it. Most people had a chance to vote. And if we lose that, which is what they're aiming for, then the world will suffer. And you will see, I mean, Ukraine will fall because of Trump. And then you're going to see Russia reaching out to Poland, the Balkans, and you're going to see China going after Taiwan. That's all going to happen in the next 2 years.
Yeah,
Watch it.
without
Watch
question,
for it.
without question. Now, I will say this about our forefathers. You said they put old, rich white men in place.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that was some sinister plot that they laid out. I think that was the culture of the times. It was a time when men were in control and women were second class citizens and kids were seen and not heard. That's the way it is. That doesn't make it better. But over the
No.
years, we've made progress. And that's where the problem comes in. They want to go back past all the progress that's been made in this country that makes this country great and go back to a time where they had all control. But by doing that, this country no longer is a great country. I will say this about Donald Trump. I think the Republicans and Donald Trump are doing a great job at limiting or mitigating illegal immigrants because who the fuck wants to come here anymore? It's
Hmm.
not a safe haven anymore. It's not a great place. The economy will be shit. This will not be a place where people want to come so that they might get their hope and slowing down illegal immigration.
That may be. Now, that's something else we should take a look at it. This whole thing of this big deportation thing that Trump has planned, it can't work. Number one, you round up all these people. How are you going to do that? Number one, the countries that you want to send them back to are going to say, no, they're not ours. You know, Mexico's not going to say, no, those guys are Guatemalans and they came from Venezuela and they're from all over the place. Um, are you going to take the entire Air Force sending people back to places that don't want to accept them? Are you going to do that? Are you going to put them out in these tent cities out in the middle of the country somewhere and for 10 years, 20 years, whatever, that it would take? It's an unworkable plan. It's stupid. And it was never meant to work any more than the border wall was ever meant to work. It's just something to talk about. And there
Right.
will be a few, they'll raid a few plants here, a few plants there. But as soon as that happens, they're going to hear from the people that didn't really think it was going to happen. And that's the people who own those plants, the people who make their money by exploiting illegals. And that's a huge number of people, believe it or not. It's huge. And you're going to see what happens. Just put the money they would have to put into that. Where's it going to come from? You know, they want to get rid of the income tax and they want to coast on nothing but tariffs. They're not going to have the revenue. They won't be able because they're cutting taxes on the people that have money.
Right. Right. Well, it's funny. I saw a story yesterday and it was about farmers finally realizing the deportation means they won't have employees in terms of immigrants. And they're going, whoa, whoa, whoa. You can't do that. Now, these are the motherfuckers that voted for him.
Yeah,
And they were told what he plans to do ahead of time. Still,
yeah,
they voted for him. And that's not even the worst part. These motherfuckers voted for him the first time. He broke them
yeah.
and he bailed them out. So they like him because he bailed them out. But he fucked you in the first place. That's why he had to bail you out and he needed your votes in 2020. So now they're talking about, well, if you do that with the immigrants, we'll have crops rotting in the field. No shit. Fuck around and find out. I don't feel any empathy for these people because they knew what they were headed into. They felt like they were right. They made the wrong choice. And sometimes you just have to deal with the ramifications of your dumb fucking choices.
Yeah, you'd think they'd learn. I mean, you know, Trump
You
with
think?
with his tariffs on China, they said, "Well, we don't need your damn soybeans. We're going to get them from somewhere else." And that impacted farmers hugely. But remember, this isn't mom and pop farming anymore. This is the big corporations, and big corporations have power. You know, they were fine with it because they got bailed out, as you say. The big ones,
Yeah.
mom and pop definitely probably got hurt. You know,
Well, the thing is in this time around, the farmers are getting a double whammy because they've got the tariffs, which are going to
yeah,
crush them. And then you throw in the deportation and they have no employees. Even if they could sell it to China or whoever else isn't buying the
right,
shit, they don't have anybody to work for them. These people, the small farmers, are going to be absolutely crushed. Like you say, the big farms might be able to survive it. But this isn't going to be good for anybody. And it's going to be very punitive to small family farms. But they voted for the motherfucker. Hard
yeah.
to feel sorry for them.
Oh, I don't. I mean, I won't. If they voted for him, then they get what they deserve. You know, it's in. Hopefully, they will understand it. I'm sure that Fox News will find some way to spin it onto the Democrats, right? And that's why Fox News has to be destroyed. If Democrats get back in power again, that's the first thing they have to do. They have to find a way to say this isn't free speech. This is promulgating misinformation. It is, in essence, it's like when the cigarette companies used to say, doctors recommend camels, right? Well, the fact of the matter is it was a hazardous product. And eventually, we finally got around to not banning tobacco, which was what we should have done. But we got most people not smoking because most people weren't stupid. They
Right.
finally got the idea that this was hurting them. Um, there's so many other things like that then goes back to the regulation. We have to find the truth that hey, cigarettes suck. Let's deal with that. In the same way that we say we have to find the truth in everything, and you can't find the truth if you have a guy with a megaphone, in this case Fox News, screaming lies 24 hours a day, and you have a president doing the same thing.
Yeah. We talk about we we talk about regulations and restrictions and Fox News shouldn't be able to do this or Donald Trump shouldn't be able to run for president because he's a convicted felon.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. People always want to say somebody should do something about this. I get people coming to me all the time saying somebody should do something about this. But the very reason they can do it is because the people of this country allow it to happen.
Yeah,
There are the people that support it and the people that sit on their thumbs and don't do anything about it. Now, for many decades, you were able to put trust. It was unwarranted, but you could put trust in the government to handle everything.
Yeah,
We're beyond that point now. We've got to take control. It's too fucking late to trust anybody else to do it for us. That's why we have to do it. And everybody says, what do we do? Whatever you can. If it's a small amount, it's a big amount. The fact that you make the effort to do something, talk to somebody, do a podcast, do whatever. But we've got to do something. We can't just sit and wait for the fucking axe to fall.
absolutely. I mean, you look at healthcare. Okay, where I go for my healthcare, they used to have 7 doctors on staff. Now they have 2, and they have the fortunately one of them is my doctor, but they also have nurse practitioners and PAs doing the rest. So they have, and you find this all over the country. Hedge funds are buying up medical practices, buying up rural hospitals, and so forth. They're sucking whatever life out of them they can. If they have an X-ray machine, they'll sell it to Guatemala. They'll do whatever they can to pick the body dry. So you said, and eventually the hospital will fold. They'll sell off the land that it's on, or whatever they will do. This is actively going on. We can stop that. We can elect people who says no, hedge funds cannot anymore buy these, exploit these vital institutions. We can do that. We can say, nah, hedge funds can't exist anymore. We did that once. We could do it again. We can say that no, private equity can't own a hospital. No, it can't be done. As a matter of fact, you can't run a hospital for profit. We can do that, but
Well,
we
we
have
can
to
do that.
elect people who will do that.
And prior to electing people, I've told people this before. The only weapon you have right now is your voice. And the louder
Yes.
that voice and the more people behind that voice, the more impact will happen. And we can make some change. And people will say, I don't believe that. Take a look at the TikTok ban. It was an inevitability that it was going to shut down on Sunday. Now it's not going to shut down on Sunday. Why is that? Because people were screaming on TikTok, other social media. They were joining some Chinese app. The government saw that 170 million people stood behind it and they
Yeah.
felt the pressure. And now it's not going to shut down. We don't know what the future is, but I would be surprised that if TikTok doesn't run out its expiration date and just becomes not popular anymore and there's something else.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be newer technology and better apps than TikTok. This isn't the end all. But by us speaking out and them feeling the pressure, things change. It's like when the CEO of United Health was shot. Next
Yeah.
day, Blue Cross Blue Shield says we're not going to cover certain anesthesia. Well, they got kind of blowback and they said, wait a minute,
Yeah.
we're not going to do that. So your
Yeah.
voice does matter, but you got to be loud and you've got to be unified. And we can create change by just creating that pressure.
Well, that's it, and that's why I'm here talking to you, and that's why I do TikToks, and that's why you do the podcast, and you do TikToks and things on YouTube and so forth. It's because every time we educate one person, that makes a difference. This morning I was walking my dog. I ran into an old friend of mine in front of the post office. I know he voted for Donald Trump. He's a nice guy, but this is a Republican area and he votes Republican, and most of the people here do that. He's a very nice man, but his wife is very disabled. She has MS and she has to be in a wheelchair, and they have a van that he drives her around in and so forth. And I know that she is getting substandard health care here because everybody is. That
Yeah.
affects him. That affects him directly, but he doesn't realize that. He asked me how I was doing, and I said, quite frankly, I'm concerned. I think the country made a huge mistake. And he said to me, well, I figure God's in charge. And I said, God was in charge in Germany in 1932. It still turned
Yeah.
out bad.
Yeah.
That doesn't, we are in charge of what goes on here. And you can argue on what you want that it's God's plan. I disagree. I don't see that. If it is, He has a bad plan. Sorry.
Yeah, I think ultimately we are in charge. We make the
Yes.
decisions. We do the things. It's that's the problem we've had in this country. People have gotten tough situations and they said, well, let the government handle it. Or they got
Hmm.
in tough situations and said, let God handle it. It's about time you put on your big boy pants, your big girl pants, and fucking do something for yourself. You dictate how your future is going to be, but you got to do something. You got to fucking say something. You're responsible for it. And to lay it off on somebody else is just weak and fucking lazy.
Absolutely. And, we were talking about how long I've been around before. I mentioned I
Right.
was born in 49, lived through the 50s. When I was, say, 10 years old, you know what most people above the age of 30 were missing?
Well, they were in buggies. Beyond that, what are we talking about?
Their teeth.
Yeah.
There was no dental care, or if there was, people couldn't afford it, so they would let their teeth rot out and get dentures. I mean, that is something that was common in the 1950s. People without teeth because they didn't know how, they couldn't afford toothbrushes and toothpaste and dental care and so forth. And by the time they were 30, they were losing their teeth. You don't see that as much anymore. Still
Not
happens.
amongst Democrats. Republicans, you do.
Yeah, well, that's meth, you know.
Yeah, well, that's
But
true.
you know, but I'm just saying that there was a sea change, and the sea change was that people they brought in rural electrification. They brought in electricity, which brought in assembly plants from up north, which gave people money and benefits. So they had dental insurance and health insurance, and were able to improve their health. They live much longer. People died in their 50s and 60s when I was a kid. Now they
Yeah,
live into their 80s and 90s.
right.
That was not the case when I was a kid. And we didn't have the vaccines then. I remember when we got the polio vaccine. I remember when we got the measles vaccine and so forth. And people stopped dying from polio and measles. But now we have these incredibly ignorant people thinking that vaccines, for some reason, are bad. And they can never articulate to me, why does someone want to give you a vaccine that will hurt you? What are they going for here? They're never able to tell me that.
I think people have short memories. I think people
Yes.
don't remember what happened when Donald Trump was president the first time. They see how things are going now, and they long for the good old days. Well, you were around in the good old days, and I was around in my good old days. And while there were some good times, there were a lot of bad times too, but people
Yeah.
seem to forget that. They want to go back to what they felt like was a better time. People of my age will say, I wish I could go back to the 70s when it was all better. Now, the 70s were fun for me because I was in high school, I was partying, I was drinking, I was going to school and stuff. But there was a lot of bad shit going on in the
Oh
70s,
yeah.
like gas problems, gas
Disco.
prices, disco. Yeah. But the point is that people have a problem with progressing. They look at
Yes.
progressive as the far left, but progressing is something that we should all naturally want to do. I mean, if you're playing golf and you play like shit, you continue to play with hopes that you're going to get better. And in this world, in this country, we should have hopes of getting better as opposed to going back to the fucking bad old days.
Yeah. Well. See, the people who vote for Trump were sold this myth that they're not doing well because lazy people get benefits that they don't. They're taking money from them and giving it to lazy people. That was never the case. There's sure every program is abused a little bit, but quite
Right.
frankly, it's much less than people think, and mostly the people that are screwing them are the people with money, the people who are paying the um, legislators to write legislation that doesn't tax them, but tax the little guy. You
Right.
know, they, why can't they see that? Why can't they understand that? I don't understand. I don't know. I do know. It's because they listen to Fox News, OAN, if, I mainly Fox. Most of these people aren't intelligent enough to use their phone to even get to OAN or some of these others, you know, or
Right.
Substacks and that kind of thing. They have no idea what that is. They just listen to Fox.
Yeah, that's true. You know, going forward, we have the inauguration of Donald Trump, and now the Democrats have to figure out how they're going to regroup and beat the Republicans in 2026 and ultimately in 2028. We heard the Democrats talking about how great the economy is, and for all intents and purposes, with all the data points, the economy is doing well, and Donald Trump will benefit from that when he takes over, like he did after Obama.
Yeah.
But there is something missing in this economy. I talked about this a number of times, and I'm going to keep talking about it because I think it's vital, not only vital for the people that are affected, but for the future of this country. While the economy is good, the thing the Democrats have ignored, everybody's ignored, is that for younger people, we don't understand this because we're older, where our life is kind of set. We just kind of go the way we go. These kids come out of college, they're saddled with huge debt. The jobs don't pay them shit. And because they don't pay them shit, they can't buy houses, they can't buy cars, they have no discretionary money, they cannot take trips. They're pretty much slaves to their debt and to low pay. The problem with that is that over time, when it's all millennials and all Gen Zs and nobody can afford a house or a car, the economy goes to shit. We boomers that have houses that we're hoping will fund us in our retirement will have less value in our homes because nobody can qualify or nobody can afford to buy these homes. This is something that's not being addressed even by the Democrats.
Right.
I think our
Well,
biggest problem isn't prices. It's our biggest problem is what we pay people.
well, that's it. I mean, the minimum wage, which is, you know, it's a standard. Okay, it hasn't really increased in a long, long time. It should be at least three times what it is now. At
Yeah.
least three
Well, it's
times
been
what it
15
is now,
years.
and that proves your point. That proves your point 100%. It's that corporations say we've got to take all the profit, and the guy I was talking about before, the guy who ran a company and lived in the town, he realized that he had to pay people enough that they could afford transportation to get to work, that they could live in a house where they could have a shower and have clean clothes and so forth in order to make it to the factory and work and do what needed to be done. The people who owned the stores, the same thing. They weren't going to hire a homeless guy off the street to stand behind their counter. There had to be a standard of living to produce the kind of person who would be able to represent them well. And corporations don't care. They just kick it down and say, middle managers, it's up to you to do this. We want the profit. You know, and so they keep the salaries low. They keep the minimum wage very, very low, 1/3 of what it should be. Really, it's more like a quarter. But this is the problem. They aren't paying people enough. And we saw the huge profits that all these corporations have made in the last 4 years. Record profits for every business, every corporation, every segment of the economy, record profits. I mean, look at the oil and gas industry, right? Record profits year over year. And yet, Donald Trump's going, we're going to drill, baby, drill. And that's stupid because they're not going to drill, baby, drill. They're already maxed out. They
Right.
can't drill anymore. They don't want to drill anymore. If they do, the price goes down. How
And when
stupid do you have to be not to realize that?
Republicans and corporations say, listen, we can't pay them more, it would hurt us in our profits. Once
Uh-huh.
again, it's the short sightedness. You got to look at the long game. If I pay people more money, they can afford to buy more shit. So while it may affect your profits, you're going to sell more product. So in the long run, it's better for you and it's better for the country. Uh, uh, Not to mention the fact that there's going to be more taxes collected. There is a lot of benefit to paying people more money to help cultivate the middle class so they can participate more in commerce in this country. But again, that's just short sightedness. Oh, it's all about the profit. It's all about me. It's all about now. If you're going to
Uh,
run a country or a corporation, you have to have a long game. You have to understand what's down the road and not worry about just what's in front of me. And that's the fatal flaw with Republicans and it's just about greed and it's just about now and it's going to kill them in the long run.
right. And realize, everybody has to realize, think, people, think. Don't believe, think. The Jeff Bezos, all of these guys, Musk, uh, these billionaires, they could give a shit about America. They don't care about America. They are not patriotic. They are a law unto themselves. They are a country. They are extra. Um, they just happen to live here, or if they live here. And but so far as maintaining the United States as an entity that is more just, more moral, more better than the rest of the world that they always claim, they have no interest in that. They are no more American than they are Venezuelan. They have no nationality. They inhabit the land of the billionaire, and that is the only loyalty they have is unto themselves.
Well, that's exactly right. When you're a billionaire, you don't care about poverty. You don't care about immigrants. You don't care about the uneducated. You don't care about the poor because you live in your own little world that you can control, that you can pay for. You're just looking down at the serfs and going, Jesus, that's too bad, but I'm good because I got a big fucking compound. I can fly anywhere I want and do whatever I want. And that's what people have to understand. You're putting your hopes and dreams in the hands of people who don't care about you, care only about themselves, and they're going to be good while you're suffering. And they're not going to have any empathy for you when you are suffering. That's the
Well, it's
amazing
like,
thing to me that people don't get that.
right. I mean, I saw James Wood boohooing on TV,
Yeah.
a guy I have no use for. Now, I really hate that the houses around his burned down. I have very little sympathy for him.
No, he's whining and crying, and then we find out, he told the story. Oh, my niece came to me with her piggy bank to help me pay. Dude, you're a fucking movie star. You probably have enough money to rebuild that fucker without even blinking. You're out here crying to get attention, and so you can get onto the newscast, so you can once again become relevant because you're a fucking has been. You're crying, and then when you find out your house is fine, then you go off and spew shit about Donald Trump and Democrats and that sort of thing. And then Donald Trump comes out, says, well, if we're going to give money to California, there's going to be some strings, or maybe we'll hold some stuff back. That would have been you, James Woods, if your house did fucking burn down. Your whole
Yeah,
community is going to suffer because your Lord and Savior says you don't deserve it. But still,
yeah.
you'll bend the knee to this dumb motherfucker.
And did you notice this morning he said um, John Voight, Sylvester Stallone, and one other one, I forget who it is, somebody equally, right wing in Hollywood are going to be his eyes and ears of Hollywood, and he's going to restore Hollywood to a golden age. He's talking about censorship or something, I suppose. I'm not sure exactly what he's going for here, but maybe it was just a pat on the back to them because they supported him. I mean, Voight, of course, was a fairly decent actor. He still is. Um, in that there can be a plumber who's also a right wing Republican who does a good job, maybe, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that he has any intellectual ability. Stallone, even less, and I forget who the other one was. But
Mel Gibson.
oh, Mel Gibbs. Oh, we got to talk about Mel for a moment. This guy is really around the bend. He's one of these traditional Latin Mass Catholics who are, really, really, really want to get the church back in charge of everything. He is, I won't call him a Christian nationalist. He's something beyond that. But that he is Handmaid's Tale for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
he is well beyond the bend. And my gosh, for a guy who was the sexiest man, he's looking more like a werewolf every day.
Yeah, he looks a little rough. And I just heard something. I don't know if it's true. Um, Donald Trump made that comment about Gibson, Stallone, and John Voight because they are sycophants to Donald Trump.
Yeah,
But I think Mel Gibson came out. This just shows you how Donald Trump does things. He just pulls shit out of his ass. He
yeah.
just says stuff. And it sounds like Mel Gibson and Stallone and Voight never even heard anything about this.
Of course
He
they
just
didn't.
appoints them, and Donald Trump never talked to him.
Yeah,
Donald Trump just says things to get responses, to get reactions, to get emotions. He doesn't have any substance behind anything he fucking says.
yeah. I'm sure somebody called him up and said, "Are you insane? We don't know anything about this stuff." You know, I mean, Trump would love to cancel the Constitution and do everything by fiat, I'm sure. And the Republicans are all in there ready to help him, both in the House and in the Senate. You can see that with these morons that he has proposed for his cabinet.
Right.
Oh my gosh. I mean, just I haven't watched much because I can't stand it. To when these Ted Cruzes and these people, instead of asking a question, they spew for 10 minutes about what a great guy this is. And his mother writes him and says, "You are awful. You're a terrible person. You're really awful to women. And I'm sick of you." Kind of that's from the guy's mother, you know.
You know,
And
what's the
yet,
most troubling thing about this is that while the Republicans are going to back the Pete Hegseth,
yeah,
the fact of the matter is there were some Republicans that didn't want to vote for him. That's reasonable. He's a fucking weirdo. He's unqualified. He's a
and a
sexual
drunk.
abuser and a
Yeah.
drunk. After that hearing, a hearing in which he answered zero questions, he just babbled on. He was fairly clear about what he babbled on. Many of these Republicans have said, he did a pretty good job. Well, yeah, if it means he didn't stammer, but there was no substance. He didn't answer any questions. And this is just what we expect out of the Republicans, but we're even hearing it out of the Democrats. Bernie Sanders saying, well, maybe RFK's got some ideas. Are you fucking high? All these people that bending the knee to Donald Trump and these fucking idiots, they should all be canceled.
Yeah.
People are mad that Carrie, whatever the fuck her name is,
Underwood. Yeah. Carrie Underwood.
Underwood is going to play at the inauguration, and they're saying you shouldn't cancel. It's just another gig. No, you support Donald Trump. You support the destruction of the country. I'm sorry. There's going to be a lot of people once the problems happen that are going to be canceled, and they're going to be standing there like, what happened? We're already seeing it. Anybody that supports Donald Trump gets a lot of blowback, and they still fucking do it. James Woods, Mel Gibson, Carrie Underwood, whoever the fuck does it. This isn't going to play out well for them because this whole thing with Donald Trump in charge, the thing they wanted, isn't going to go well. And they're going to have to fucking answer for it. And I'm glad of it.
I assume Carrie thinks that people who like country music like Donald Trump.
I'm
Talk
sure.
to Dolly, Carrie. See
Yeah.
what Dolly has to say, or many Willie and so forth. Right?
Willie, too. Yeah.
No, I mean I was never a Carrie Underwood fan anyway.
No.
I'm not all the country music guys sound exactly the same to me. I mean, it used to be when you had a Johnny Cash and
Earl Haggard.
Merle Haggard and different. They sounded different. Now they all sound exactly the same, and the women pretty much the same too.
It's not really country, it's pop
No,
country.
exactly. It's pop with an accent. That's what it is. It's nothing to do with roots or anything else. Um,
See, that's the thing with Dolly. Dolly did country songs
yeah,
and she did pop songs,
yeah.
but she made no, she didn't disguise the shit. She did what she did when she did it, and she had integrity and she had talent. When you compare somebody like Dolly Parton to Carrie Underwood or some of these other, there's no fucking comparison. At
No,
least
and
Dolly had
Dolly's
some
would
integrity and talent.
Well, I mean, people are still singing Jolene, and she wrote that 40 years ago.
Right.
Name me a Carrie Underwood song. Jesus Take the Wheel. I think that's one.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I think
about
that's
it,
one of them. And
which is small. So I'm sorry.
she has some pop talent. I don't see her as country because country, whether it was conservative, that's the other thing. People keep throwing this around liberal and conservative. There aren't any conservatives anymore because
Nah.
conservatives don't behave like they do now. Donald Trump is not a conservative. He's not a Republican. Still, the people who claim to be Republican and conservative hitch their wagon to him because he's the hot new thing that's going to get them elected. They don't care if he represents what they believe, just that they fucking win.
Yeah. Um, I must admit, I won't be watching.
No, I
I
won't watch.
the and I am troubled. I am troubled that this man will make a huge dent in the economy, and not just ours, but the world economy. And because I can read history books. I saw what happened with Smoot Hawley when, right at the beginning of the Depression, they came out with this huge tariff over, so many different products, and it destroyed world trade. 70 went down by 70%, which made the Depression probably a lot worse than it would have been. We might even just have been a recession, but for that, it's hard to know. But I do know that one, if you saw what happened during COVID,
Right.
it
It
was
was horrible.
it was horrible. And that was a natural occurrence. No, it was not done on purpose, morons. It was exacerbated by Trump's policies, certainly,
Or
but
lack thereof.
or lack thereof, and muddying the waters and so forth. The You saw what happened there. It will be the same. It will be your prices, your eggs are not going to be cheaper. They may be for a week or something, because a lot of these grocery places and so forth want to support Trump because he's going to give them tax breaks, he's going to reduce the regulations and so forth, right? So they may make it look like. Do you think? And let me throw this out real quick. The ceasefire in the Middle East.
Right.
Trump's going to get some credit for that. But that's Netanyahu caving in to Trump, his buddy, who's kept him in power. And that's what happened there. Hamas was ready to settle a long time ago, I'm sure. It was Netanyahu wanting that to keep that going so he could stay in power. But now he's had to knuckle under to Trump, who sent him a message, I'm sure, saying, you'll regret it if you don't. And you're going to give me credit for it.
No, and what
Guarantee
does a
you.
student one of the reasons Netanyahu kept perpetuated this war is because he knew when the war was over that he might be booted out of his position and
And
could very
maybe
well go to
imprisoned.
jail.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and go to jail. So is he still at risk of that, or does somehow Donald Trump save him from that demise?
That's a good question. He may just up and leave.
Yeah, exile his ass out of there.
Yeah,
That
it's
might
like
be the wise move.
what's his face from Syria, who's now in Russia. I don't know where Netanyahu goes. He doesn't have that many friends. Maybe here.
No, no, he really doesn't. So you don't think there's any? I mean, there. Somebody asked Joe Biden how much credit do you give Donald Trump for this ceasefire, and he turned around and he looked. He goes, "Are you serious? Are you joking about that?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Look, the plan that they agreed on is a plan we put together months ago. So it's already been in place, as you pointed out. Donald
Yeah.
Trump will take credit. This is just another version of Ronald Reagan and the hostages in Iran. It's the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
Make me look good.
Yeah. I mean, the Republicans have been doing this since Nixon. Nixon sent Kissinger to tell the Viet Cong, hold on a minute, I'll give you a better deal. And then had to turn tail and run. But and then Reagan sent his people to Iran and said, look, not only keep those hostages and I'll give you replacement parts for your airplanes and, all the other stuff he gave them.
Right.
Should have gone to prison, should have died in prison. So should Nixon. But they got away with it, and no, we're going back now. But I do think that the negotiations that took place, what they have set now, I think that was all the Biden administration working with Hamas and the other countries that put this thing together, right? I think there would be no ceasefire without that framework. I do think that Trump told Netanyahu, you got to take it because I don't think Netanyahu would have done it,
No.
but for that. And it wasn't that it's just Trump wants credit, or he's going to try to take credit for
Well,
it.
and actually, when it was first announced that there was a ceasefire,
Yeah,
Netanyahu says, "Well, there's no deal yet. There's a crisis here or a crisis there." I mean, there were ceasefire options in the past where he pretty much submarined it. They
yeah,
could have they could have done it months before, but
months
as you
ago.
say, now that Donald Trump is president, Bibi's in a bad situation in that Donald's going to dictate what his future is, and Donald Trump has no motherfucking loyalty.
No,
He'll
and
burn him down if he has to.
before during the election or during the campaign, he said something like Hamas better realize there will be hell to pay. Well, that was an empty threat. What was he going to do? I mean, he can't fight Hamas. What's he going to do? Bomb everything that's been completely bombed back to the Stone Age already? Or send in troops? I don't think so. It was an empty threat, and everybody knew it.
Yeah, yeah, it absolutely was. Well, Ed, we're going to wrap things up. I appreciate you taking the time to talk. I want to remind folks, Ed puts out some great content on TikTok and YouTube. You can find him at Holler Troll, HOLLERTROLL. Sounds like things are continuing to progress with your TikTok account and YouTube, I presume, and everything going the way you want it to go.
Yeah, I just want to. I've had a number of people to ask me, if and when TikTok goes away, where can we find you? I
Right.
guess I would primarily be aimed at YouTube. I've already got a presence there. It's small, but I would concentrate on that, and it is also at Holler Troll. It's just www.youtube.com/at Holler Troll. You find me
Well,
there.
and I would just tell you with YouTube, YouTube is a better place. It's like a safer place. You don't get harassed as much,
Yeah,
and but it is slow. So
yeah.
the key to it is just continue putting out content and be patient. And
Well, I
as you get
think
more followers, it exponentially gets bigger faster.
Well, I think I've got about 100 followers there because I don't really nurture it, but I just put stuff up after I've had it on TikTok some. But the I've got like 100 followers there versus almost 7,000 on TikTok. So
Right.
I would miss TikTok. I don't monetize it as yet, but the possibility is there. That's not why I do it. I do it as a creative outlet and to
Right.
remind people that I've lived a life in which I've learned some things. And here's what I've learned, And occasionally I would just snark on Donald Trump just for the hell of it.
Well,
But
you know,
I'll find a way. But YouTube's probably the place to go if TikTok does go away. And of
it's
course, I'll
all
be here with you from
exactly.
time to time.
Exactly. And we were talking about education before, and you made a mention of, your age and being experienced. And I think this is what people have to understand. Education is one thing. It's just the basis for what you know and learning how to learn. The truly educated, truly intelligent people in this world are the people that stay curious after education. Stay
Yes.
curious, look into things, read things, listen to things, critically analyze these things, and come up with your own thoughts. That's how you become smart. And that's open to just about anybody except
Yeah.
Donald Trump. But
It's called
but
being an autodidact. teach yourself. It's there. Once you figure out how to access information and where to go for it, you're home free. Then all you have to
Yeah,
do is just keep doing it.
absolutely. Well, Ed, thank you very much for coming on. Those of you listening, thank you for taking the time. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.